everybody, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Alchemist Discussions. In this second video, I'm featuring a wonderful friend of mine named Pia. She's originally from Slovenia. She currently lives in London. She has a background in psychology and a master's in analytical psychology from the University of Essex, which is where we met. She's currently working in an assisted living home for people who are suffering from schizophrenia, and I was curious to see how the transition from academia to real life experience has been for her, and how what we learned in theory has been able to come out in practice or understanding in ways. So without further ado, let's get started. What were your initial ideas about schizophrenia? So, I mean, even aside from what we learned, like, what were your initial ideas about, like, what schizophrenia was?
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, I just think I had this, like, maybe stereotypical idea of what schizophrenia could be. Like, first thing that came to my mind was obviously delusions, hallucinations. You even seen in the movies or media or whatever, like, it's like the craziest people out there, out of this world. And I would think that they just keep hearing voices. They can't really connect to our reality. And then, like, getting more and more information about it, I kind of saw that is the case, actually. When we were talking about Jung and how he saw it, I really, really like the idea of that schizophrenia is very similar to dreaming. And you know that I really love dreams and everything. Jung said that it's like dreaming, but being still awake. So maybe just being in your worst nightmare, maybe, but just not sleeping. So when our conscious, our ego, can't have the control over unconsciousness. So basically, the easiest way to see it is that unconscious is just, it's just stronger than us. Like, we suppress so many things, but at that point with schizophrenia, it just, overcomes everything, and your ego, like, you don't have any power over it. So you don't like these voices, you don't like these hallucinations, but you just simply can't do anything about it. They're just stronger than you, and they work regardless of what you think, what you feel. They're autonomous, and they come when they come, and they go when they go. And that's why it's so interesting to think about schizophrenia. Like, me personally, I was like, oh, I can't wait to start working with people like that, just because I want to see that in real life, how that looks. But then knowing that this is not even treatable, like, you can't even resolve that kind of problem. You can only support people with schizophrenia, and you can just maybe teach them how to live with it. But that's going to be something that is going to stay with them for the rest of their lives. With medication and stuff, you can kind of maybe suppress it a little bit, but that's the whole problem as well. Like, you're just suppressing the symptoms, you're not really curing anything. But knowing that it's uncurable, it's kind of scary at the same time.
So do you remember when Jung, Sabina Spielrein, she had schizophrenia, and Jung healed or helped her heal schizophrenia, and she, like, recovered from it. And I always thought that was, like, amazing, because aside from that story and, like, very, very rare stories I've heard by these, like, incredible psychoanalysts, psychologists, it seems to be an illness that is, like, very, very difficult to overcome, because it's like you said, like, the voices have kind of created, like, or they are their own, like, autonomous, like, entities. Like, they're just as powerful as the ego. They have, like, so much power in this person's mind. Do you find that, or have you found at all, because, like, this is kind of a thought that I had about schizophrenia, is that there may have been some traumatic experience, and then there was, like, a psychic kind of split off, because the ego couldn't handle that traumatic experience, that it created basically, like, another entity to survive that experience.
as like self mechanism, basically,
Yeah.
that we wouldn't survive otherwise if our psyche wouldn't help us with like splitting that trauma away from us, so then pushing it in the unconscious. Like, yeah, I feel like, I think majority of cases is in the back, in the past, you then find a very traumatic experience in that person's life, and then, I don't know, schizophrenia reaches the peak when you're like in your teens. It can happen when you're younger, and then it just kind of develops, and then you just learn to live with it. And when you said that Jung kind of helped Sabina with it, and that they actually cured it, I don't think that's even possible.
And yeah, I like, because when I read it, I was like, did that really happen? I mean, she seemed to like not have it later in her life, and she was able to be like a therapist for other people. So I really like wonder, like, these people who have been able to recover, slash the people that have helped them recover, I wonder what it is that they knew about it, because like in modern day, I never hear that happens.
Yeah, that's the thing, because maybe they can just recognize the voice. So maybe at the beginning you start hearing voices, and you see these hallucinations that you have, and you are confused, and you are scared, because that's your new reality. Like, you believe in that because that's what you see, that's what you hear. It's like, when I hear something, it's real because I hear it, and for them it's real because they hear it, but it's just in their head.
Part of me has always kind of wondered, like, is this person's reality, are they just like tapped into another reality that we don't have access to? Or is it really that they're just so disconnected from our reality? You know what I mean? Like, I kind of I've always wondered that, like, as somebody who works with these people, do you ever feel like the best way to kind of work with them is to meet them in what is their reality than trying to pull them into ours?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the first rule when it comes to that, when it comes to working with them, is that never ever challenge their reality. So I would never come there and be like, what are you saying? Like, that's not true. You can't be hearing that, because that doesn't exist, that's in your head. Like, you don't go around saying that. You need to meet them halfway somewhere. They need to feel safe. So usually these thoughts and these voices are scary, like really scary. Like, they're gonna say, like, the outside the house in the garden there are people talking and planning her murder, and they want to murder her, and they want to kill her, and that they already buried her family underneath the house, and now she's afraid to go even out of the house. And then you're like, obviously that's not true, but what are you gonna say? So in a way, I forget about what reality is. I just try and make sure that she feels safe here, that it's okay, that that we're gonna kind of go through it. And then because it's like a roller coaster. Like, one day she's gonna have paranoia and these thoughts are gonna be really high, and then one day she's gonna be completely fine. So it's just like, kind of, as I said, like maintaining that as stable as it can be, her day-to-day life. It really goes day by day. You can't be really working for I don't know, you having like huge future plans. I think you really need to kind of go slowly with that. And also, when it comes to like treating it, I feel that they can just learn to see, okay, this is not real, this is my voice. They usually even they can give names to these voices, so when they start speaking to them, they can be like, okay, this is not real, like, I know that this is in my head. But I think this is very advanced interpretation already.
Right.
Like, clients like that probably, they've been working with that for years, and now they acknowledge, okay, I have schizophrenia, and they learn how to deal with it. But sometimes it's not that easy to distinguish what's real and what's not. So
I took an abnormal psychology class like years ago, And one of the questions that my teacher asked us is she wrote like every like, mental illness that we, conventionally know about. And she asked us, she was like, have any of you ever felt afraid of the future? And like everybody rose their hand. And there was like, she was like, have any of you ever felt very sad? And like everybody rose their hand. She was like, have any of you ever heard voices in your head that aren't yours? And everybody like rose their hand. And she was like, we've all experienced these things on some level. And when we say that somebody has this as a mental illness, we say that they have these particular I guess like experiences in their mind, but to like an extreme. So I find it like really interesting that like as I'm like hearing you talk, and also just in general like studies I've done with schizophrenia, I will like think to myself, I'm like, yeah, I've heard like voices in my head that aren't my own, and I've kind of had to like say like, no, that I don't agree with that. Or when sometimes you get in arguments with like things that come through your mind, you're like, no, I don't want to think that, it's not true. I wonder if like, like this is just, if these people are having kind of those experiences, but it's just a very extreme version of it.
I would say that probably to some extent we all had that kind of experience where there were intrusive thoughts, usually maybe negative, like you're not good enough, or you can't do it, or you're too lazy, or like I don't know what. But for us it's easier just because that you're kind of talking to yourself. But with them it's scary. In my opinion, it's scary that the voice is completely different. It's not theirs. It can be, so if I'm a woman, a man can be talking in my head.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that's why it's so confusing, because you're like, oh my God, like I actually can hear something, because it's not a familiar voice.
Yeah.
It's something they've never heard before. And, it's like a third person. So obviously it freaks you out. And obviously that's why it's so hard to distinguish what's reality and what's not, because you actually hear, just like imagine just a random voice in your head, and you're like, that must be someone actually talking, because that's not my own voice.
Right.
And then especially when it comes to hallucinations, like if you see something, so right. how can you be like, oh my God, like, is that real or is it not? So I need to be a familiar face for them. First they need to kind of let me in, because so where I work it's a house with 7 or 8 clients, and they live there. That's actually their house. So I come there every day, or however much I work, and I support them on like daily tasks, or emotional kind of I wouldn't say therapy, because I'm not a therapist yet, but just like emotional support and stuff like that. So obviously you coming there is that's a stranger for them. They never seen you before, with all this paranoia in their head. It's scary, like, who are you, what do you want? So mostly you see that when you come in, like as a new person, as a new staff member, you can be the trigger for them. Maybe for a month you can be their trigger. For a month, you could be the enemy. You can be the reason for all their voices. And that was actually going on. Like there was a client, and then when I came in, they warned me. They were like, be careful, because she's very paranoid, and she's not good with new people, and especially men. Like she gets paralyzed if men come to the house, because of the past experience that she's been through. Like honestly, her story, Anastasia, I've never heard anything like it. Like that's out of the world. I could not imagine that another human being could do something like that to someone else. So basically, like one example, it was one of the first few days that I was working there, and I was wearing a belt, and belt was hanging off my trousers, like in front of me. And I come into the lounge, and she's like, oh, you have a penis. And I was like, I thought that's a joke. And I was like, haha, yeah, whatever. And then I think like 7-8 days passes, and then she had to go to the hospital, to her psychiatry appointment, like, whatever, just for a few hours. She would need someone to escort her, and they were like, Pia, can you do it? And I was like, yeah, sure. She looks at me and she's like, I'm not going with her. I'm not going with her. She's not going to be next to me. And you try not to take it personally, but you're like, what did I do wrong? And she's like, she has a penis. And I was like, first I was like, what? And then I remembered, I was like, oh my God, 1 week ago, she saw that belt and she thought, that's penis. And so that was something that stuck to her mind. And then she said, she's a penis face. And I was like, what's going on? I didn't know how to kind of get, like, come over that point. And then more and more I got to know her and her story and her background story. Basically, I realized that she was like so abused in her past by her husband that anything that could remind her of a male would be a trigger. So then you see, okay, I can't take it personally, and then you just try and prove her wrong in that way, that you are there to support her, you are there, you're a good person, you want to help her. And then eventually she saw that, and our relationship then was actually very good. But at the beginning, you are shocked that this was her belief and I could not do anything about it. Like, she actually believed that. More and more that I got to know them, and when they actually accepted me and then they got used to me, then they would come to you like randomly, and they were like, I heard that, they would tell you about the voices, and they would be, I don't know, for example, she comes to you, like, all of a sudden she looks at you and you're like, and she's like, you're draining my beauty, you're stealing my organs, you stole my brain. And what are you gonna say? You know what I mean? She honestly believes that. And when it comes to, I don't know, her family, when she thinks that her family is murdered and is buried under the house. And one time, one of the clients, she told me that she saw a man pushing a wheelbarrow, and inside it was her dead brother.
Oh wow.
And you're like, every single time I said to myself, like, imagine really, really believing that. For me, it's not as scary because I know it's not true, but she actually saw that.
Right.
And then you're, you come to a realization that it makes sense why she's so afraid, why she's so paranoid, why she doesn't want to leave the house, why her life is basically non-existent, because that's her reality, that's constantly there. And her specifically, she just has all these like scary thoughts that skeletons are under her bed, like that someone is in her bathroom at night and is talking to her, and you know what I mean. And she always thinks that her ex-boyfriend is coming to the house and is sleeping with every other client, and she knows because she heard him and she can smell him, and she can, you know what I mean. So then you see, when why it comes to the whole reality thing, because they can smell, they can hear, they can see. So how can you convince her otherwise if she's like, no, I saw her. And we have cameras in certain rooms, just to kind of keep an eye what's going on, and if an incident happened, you can see what was going on. And you tell her, look, don't worry, we have cameras, we saw that no one entered the house, it's safe, like, don't worry, doors are locked, and da 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 da. But she's gonna be like, no, I heard him enter, I heard him opening the door, I heard him have sex with another person, I could smell sex.
Wow.
And you're like, yeah, fair enough.
How do you think like the spiritual kind of like plays into this? I know that was like definitely something that we always try to look at as well with Jungian studies, is like, how does spirituality kind of play into this? Have you had any ideas? about that, because like, I mean, similar to like when you see a ghost is, you know, I hear people kind of say the same things, like, and even my own experiences, like you'll smell somebody that's like passed away, or you'll, you know, hear something or feel something. So I wonder what your thoughts are on like how does spirituality kind of come in at all?
I believe that there's always gonna be two people. Like one is gonna believe in spirituality, and some people are just gonna be like, no, 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 that you can't prove that, you know, it's non-existent. So depends on in which way you look at the situation. But I would definitely say that spirituality plays a huge role in like different cultures, in different communities. Like maybe here in Europe, I'm not gonna come across that very often, but then if you do a little research, you can see that, you know, all the, for example, there is shaman where he can hear voices, and then the community he lives in, they're gonna believe that, and they're gonna see that as a gift, as a talent, and they're gonna, you know, encourage him to and guide him to kind of express himself. So he's gonna be expressing all these voices, and they're gonna, you know, worship him. Whereas here in our culture, total opposite, you know, this is stigma, this is something bad, like you're broken, you're wrong for that, you know, just everything negative that you can apply to it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be that you have this label on your forehead, and that's it, and you can't get a job, you can't have a normal relationship, you can't have anything, you know, you just belong to the hospital. Why? You know, and it's so interesting to see, like, in some other community, because it's going to be seen as something positive, you know, you are gifted. Some culture, they would put like a hat on your head, and they're going to start, you know, playing drums, and, you know, this atmosphere is going to be maybe next to the fire, and
Yeah, I've seen that.
you know what I mean, and then this person is going to maybe look possessed, and some crazy things are going to come out of him. But it could be just schizophrenia, but it's viewed completely different.
Right.
Different people around him, community supports that. So I think what we do wrong here is like applying this stigma and negativity to it. Like, why is it negative?
I wonder if like one of the problems that we have like towards schizophrenia is that instead of, you know, we always see it immediately as like it's a problem, it's a mental illness, something is like wrong, as opposed to kind of opening it up and saying like, of course, like that can exist, and for a lot of people we could say it's connected to like very like deep trauma and deep abuse. But what if there are instances where it doesn't need to be seen that way? And I feel like, again, it's kind of like seeing each person as an individual and their own particular experience with, you know, what we say is schizophrenia.
I've seen, it was a TED talk, I think. This girl, she has schizophrenia, and she said, well, everyone thinks that, you know, people will hallucinate, and but she was like, that was not me. Like, I didn't have voices, and I didn't hear voices, I didn't see things, you know. And every single person should be viewed as unique and individual. Every single case is different. So also, like, when it comes to treating these people, you can't have one model and just apply to every single person, because it's going to be completely different. You know, if she has paranoid thoughts mostly, you know, you need to take completely different approach that someone that just, you know, have some kind of different delusions, you know what I mean? So just taking each individual as individual, and, you know, seeing and hearing, like, also day by day, because every single day is going to be different, you know.
Like when we studied, I know we like spoke a lot about like archetypes and even like the theory of complexes and like the shadow and like anima, animus. Have you found that like through your experience so far that it has like deepened your understanding of any of these, or do you find that like none of them have really been useful?
For example, when you told me that we're going to be talking about that, and then I started thinking back, did I hear anything like it? And then I remembered, for example, this one client, she said she believed that she has snakes in her stomach, and it was serious because she kept saying that and she kept believing, and it was just like, it was horrible. And then staff members had to take her to x-ray to scan her stomach to prove to her, look, nothing is in your belly, don't worry, it's that's the reality. And even that didn't help. She was like, no, I have snakes inside of me, and that's it. And then I was thinking, snake is something so mythological, so like so many symbols can be in it. And then I was thinking, what does that mean? What did that mean for her? Was she in some kind of period of
like awake
in her life, like what these snakes represented? Could that be viewed as a symbol, or was it just random because snake maybe in her head is something negative and scary? So was it just random, or was it like archetypal? What if that was just, it really triggered me. I was like, wow. But then I never really, yeah.
So I wonder, because like you said earlier, that kind of like recognizing that these people are in a sense like living in a dream that is very much a reality for them, and kind of like, even taking like what they're seeing what they're saying that they see, and what they're hearing as kind of like a dream symbol, I think it seems like maybe it could be very helpful. And if you were to even like break down like what a snake would mean, like you'd have to see what it means to her, of course. But I remember like even Jung drawing snakes in the Red Book, and this symbol of like, Kundalini and like awakening of like spiritual energy. And it's also, the symbol in the Bible that was like this image of like temptation.
Snake is huge,
Huge, yeah.
And I think Freud said that it represents man's penis.
Yeah.
So just
everything like, for him is a penis, a hot dog, a sandwich, a skyscraper.
Literally. For I think dreams and schizophrenia can be connected, on like an important level, let's say, just because when it comes to dreams, that's the link to our unconscious, so dreams are telling us something that we are not aware of, like it's a blank spot for us that, in conscious mind we don't know what's going on. So when we're gonna dream, all these symbols are gonna come out, and it's just a code for us. And obviously when you wake up, you're like, what the fuck? But if you know how to decode that, you come to their real meaning. So here, I believe with schizophrenia, being awake in the dream, so why wouldn't we just take all these symbols, all these stories that they tell us as some kind of symbols, as some kind of codes, and just try and work with it, and then come to maybe emotional trauma that actually happened, because for example, I think it was also part of TED Talk. There was a girl that she heard voices, and when she was on her own, when she heard them, it was fine. But then she got close with her flatmate, and she told her flatmate, and she was like, I hear that. And she was like, oh my God, you need to see a doctor. And then she was like, oh, okay, so that's something negative. And then she saw a doctor, and doctor said, you need to see psychiatrist. And then she saw psychiatrist, and psychiatrist was like, okay, you have schizophrenia, this is the label you get, here are the medication you need to take. So she was medicated for years, and it only suppressed the symptoms, but she felt horrible. And then luckily, because of her, I think, friends and family, they helped her, and she got the strength to come out of it and stop taking medication. And she allowed those voices, and with the help of these voices, she could actually come to the root of her problem. And she realized that actually in the past there was sexual abuse, so she learned about her trauma through these voices. So imagine, but maybe that's one case, and then the other, someone else is gonna say that without medication they wouldn't survive. So you can't be like, one or the other. I think,
Sure.
Whatever suits this particular individual, but she was great for these voices, because she could check the symbols and kind of find the emotional reality to everything.
There's this very like conventional way of like dealing with schizophrenia, which is just like suppress the voices, just like, do what you can to just allow this person to just be alive, even if it means that like they're numb. Kind of, maybe you do need a little bit of medication to assist, but just medication, how could you see, like now with your experience, that would be very unhelpful? Or do you find that, there like an element of medication is useful?
I would definitely say that it can't only be one thing. So it can't be only medications, because for example, our ladies, our clients, they all take medication. They all take medication for schizophrenia, and the dosage is very high, but that doesn't mean they're gonna be good. Like there are times, as you said, like they appear numb, like they're gonna look through you. And I feel like when they have this stare, this look, I believe, they're in their own reality at that moment. Medication is not going to help. Maybe it's going to stabilize or make it a little bit better, but it's not going to prevent those voices. To combine therapy, so conversation, psychotherapy, with then psychiatry, which is then meds, so kind of keeping a person above the water a little bit with medication, so they can go through the day, but also not just leaving them there, just to float. Sometimes you just wish to be in their heads just for one day, just to experience what does that mean. Like you don't really want to be then stuck there, because probably it's horrible, and you see it's horrible because you see how they act, but probably none of us can even imagine. Because when you have a nightmare and you wake up and you're like, oh, thank God it was a nightmare, but then imagine that you can't wake up. Imagine that you just leave that. And
yeah.
Hey guys, if you stuck around to the end of the video, I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation I had with Pia. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and check out any other videos that I've already posted. And see you next week.